Yes, Giro Sen, and this is another episode of RuggaMatrix International. Mark Cashman, thanks for joining us.
Well, Brock, the name of the show is The Blame Game, and that's what we're talking about tonight.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of blame to go around, and after a week off, and I thought he did a pretty good job, Sean Berry filling in, two Fairfax boys. Ben Kimber, welcome back. How was your week off? A bit of holidays?
Mate, absolutely. Very refreshed up to the Central Coast. Fantastic.
All right, I hope you're refreshed because we'll be talking about the great Bernard Foley. And I think we know where that's going to head. But anyway, we'll cover that in a second. We just have to, straight off the top, we're recording this during the Michael Hooper sighting and judiciary appearance, and unfortunately we can't hang out. We've got to record the show now. So we'll just proceed as if everything's fine and dandy. But fine and dandy, it is not for England. And I'll start with you, Cash Cow. England. You know, I did say on Twitter I was actually disappointed to see England out so early because I would have loved them continuing through the World Cup. It keeps England, really behind the team as well and the competition. But they were meek in the way they bowed out of the competition, I thought.
I think in week one of our comeback sort of tour, I did say stuff about that teams need to play footy to win this World Cup, and England just refused to play football, really, didn't they, over those first two or three games? And that was sort of brought out against the Wallabies. You know, when that scrum domination didn't come, a lot of their exiting strategies, which I noticed Rod Kafer was talking about, revolved around kicking the ball and whether it was knocking on and putting the Australian scrum under pressure. When the Wallaby scrum aimed up, they just had no plan B, and that's an unfortunate part about this whole tournament. The first nation that hosted a tournament not to make through the quarterfinals. It's a damn shame, but you could probably see it coming for quite some time, really.
And Ben, I've got to say, it is a shame. But why did England fold as badly as they did?
Mate, I don't think anyone saw it coming that they would fold that badly, mate. We all talked in the lead up to the World Cup around the pool of death, and most of the chat was around Wales or Australia being under pressure. Everyone thought the home side in a good space, they should get through. But they absolutely fell apart, a bit of pressure there. Casho said no plan B. I didn't see a plan A. As soon as the Wallabies were actually putting a bit of heat on them, there was actually nothing there in response. One of the really key points that I sort of picked up in the game and before the game was I saw the Fox Sports Lab guys tweet stats from last year when England, of course, beat Australia. And the stats from that game, Australia had all the run of the game according to the stats. They had all the metres, they had all the line breaks, they had much fewer tackles, they had all the possession, but they lost the game. So the big difference this time, and this time when England in that first half had a bit of possession, they had plenty of ball, they had plenty of territory, but the set piece is where it started and finished in both games. Last year our scrum got pumped and we got beaten. This year, what a turnaround. What a fantastic turnaround. All of a sudden, our scrum was on top. You get that set dominance. You get that ability to front foot ball. I know you'll talk about your friend Foley in a minute. But the more that those guys had that set piece dominance, different game.
That is absolutely true. But Asho, as you know, just because we had a great scrum last week does not mean we're going to have a good scrum next week. In fact, scrum to scrum, it changes so quickly.
Oh, it certainly does. And I think one of the things about this Wallaby side is they're consistently inconsistent. I think Greg Growden has said on ESPN Scrum, the great man, Greg Growden.
Shout out to Growden.
Yeah, the great bear.
Yeah, and that's very much the case. You know, like who's going to turn up against Wales? We'll obviously just have to wait and see. But just back onto to England. I think numerous things about the way they went about things, about the Lancaster regime, whether it continues. Who knows? The odds are it won't. But there was a certain stiffness in the way they went about things. They were very, very, very structured. He's a school teacher, which means he loves to have that control over people, and it just did not work. You know, I think the Checker way of doing things is a lot better. You know, like it's more a man management thing rather than a disciplinary approach.
But that depends. You can't the way Checker coaches probably wouldn't work in New Zealand. You know, where they do like to have the coach to have that authority over the team in a certain way, and so Deans didn't work in the Australian environment. And having been in that back room, I can tell you exactly why the Australians approach the game differently. Maybe a little bit more lazy when it comes to playing the game, and I actually mean that in a positive way. The Australian teams have always been known for their nous and cleverness in destroying teams with little effort. And some of the great teams have done that. I remember Tim Horan would only ever run as fast as he had to. But we're sort of digressing there. When it comes to England, though, and what they came up with in Australia, we talked about selections. And we defended Sam Burgess here a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week or whenever it was, about him copying the blame for the loss. Now that we saw what we did the other day, is Sam Burgess blameless, or does he deserve a bit of stick about what happened?
Well, it all goes back to the selection process. It's flawed on a number of levels because I think they basically got it wrong. They didn't pick a guy who was going to play on the ball. Stefan Marmicic, European Player of the Year, was there. The captain, Chris Roberts, was pretty ordinary, and obviously the Pooper show, the Pocock and Hooper combination just absolutely played him off the park. The guy who was going to be a real danger for England, Ben Morgan, the big number 8, just wasn't in the game. He was unsighted for many minutes.
That centre combination, I think, though, is really part of the key that most people have been talking about, which was definitely that Barrett out of position outside centre in that previous game with Burgess at inside, neither of whom got the ball out wide. I think in that first game against Wales, the stats were there was one pass that went through the centres to the wing, and it actually was the one they dropped, hit the ground and rolled out to the winger. There wasn't actually any ball movement at all. They picked a team to play Wales. Did they have a plan A? Their plan A was, how do we face the opposition? The Wallabies very clearly, under Checker, go in there to say, it's not about the opposition, it's about us, it's about getting our game right. England aren't doing that.
Yeah, clearly he's said that a number of times. We're going to play this way. Win or lose, we're going to play this way. And that's what the Waratahs did. And a few times they did lose on the way through, Ben.
They did. And I think that one of the connections here that seems to be the missing piece for England is there's been also a lot of talk out of England and the England journos around culture, around the way that there was an enormous focus on culture in this team, but clearly perhaps to the detriment of other things. Where Checker seems to have got this balance right, and we've got to be careful about over-egging the pudding here with Checker because there's a long way to go. But where he seems to have the balance right is that focus on culture, but in tandem with the way you play and the way that you're going to approach the game and the way they get stuck in.
It's interesting too, the England approach I thought was flawed. The Wallabies gave them the outside channels, I thought. The defence was very compressed, and that meant that they could handle the threats that were there with Burgess, with Barrett, Joseph, and those other guys, the big ball runners in their back row. They sort of compressed a little bit, conceded the outside, and just sort of trusted their scramble, and that worked. Whether it's going to work against Ireland in a semi-final, or whether it's going to work against Scotland in a quarter-final, or Wales on Saturday, who knows? But it was an absolute masterstroke on the night. The other thing was, I heard on the television the second Foley try, which was an absolutely superbly executed set move. Everyone was talking about how Stephen Larkham inspired this great move. That's a move that's been used by the Waratahs for the best part of the last 2 or 3 years. So let's thank Daryl Gibson for that one.
And it brings me to the point that Curtly Beale is on the field earlier than expected. What do you think about his impact? Because he actually played his hand really well, I thought. He didn't overplay his hand, which he can do sometimes.
He got involved, and he's one of those, the hackneyed phrase, a mercurial player, but he's got that spark and that zip. And that's a really interesting selection now with Rob Horne clearly under a bit of a cloud. We're not sure what's going to go on there. Rob Horne was the safe pick. Curtly Beale isn't the safe pick, but he gives you a lot of different things, and he certainly had one of those games where you could see that he was up for it, firing it in there. And I think that's probably another good example of him playing under a coach that he really appreciates in Checker.
Yeah. Let's get on to it. Bernard Foley. Ben Kimber, you slammed him a couple of weeks. Slammed him. I mean, it's like he ran over your cat.
I see where this is going.
But I didn't waste any time jumping on Twitter saying, bam, that's why I backed this man when he scored his first try. He's got guts, he's got determination. He's a 10, he plays at fullback as well if he needs to. I love him. He did a good job. But I think he played a really good game. And for most of it was him versus England on the scoreboard, which is what you want out of your 10. But look, I was really impressed. I won't go on about it, but it was great to... Look, I just think for a bloke who plays above his weight every week, he played a million times above his weight again at the weekend, but I reckon he's still got more performances in him. Over to you, Ben.
Yeah, look, I see where you're going with this, Bronk. I can't take all the credit for getting that result out of Bernard. Mate, he was clearly
on the wall pre-game. Check us in. Nah, look at this, mate. Right. I'm going to put this on there.
Mate, that is clearly the best game he's ever played, particularly in the Wallabies jersey. That was a fantastic game. He was clearly, his kicking game even. I think I didn't see a part of his game that wasn't at its top. You've had even the games he played for the Waratahs at his best. I never thought his tactical kicking game was a strength. It was okay, but it wasn't a strength. There was other guys that were looked for instead. But he found the lines, he found the space in both the tactical kicking and with the ball in hand, and quite an exceptional game. A forward pack on the front foot made an enormous difference. And I think what I've said to you before was I didn't rate him as a world-class 5'8". Still not there. If he puts a couple more efforts in and gets us to the World Cup final, I'll change my tune.
Ben, do you think I can call you Ben, can't I?
You can call me Ben.
Yeah. The studious service that he got off Will Genia, I think probably helped his game because he wasn't under pressure to hit the ball on the run time after time after time with Phipps, and we saw how Phipps, he got the yips when he came on. A couple of things sort of went astray. Having Genia, that experience there, just a guy whose service probably isn't as quick as Nick Phipps, but he knows when to give it and he knows when to hold it, so to speak.
Yeah, we talked about Genia in our first hit out a couple of weeks ago. And I think I said at the time, I thought he was the better option because he is a bit more of that certainty there. Phibbs is still that little bit of an uncertain factor. Genia, still not at his best, still not at the Genia that we saw a couple of years ago, but very much reliable, can read the game, can get the ball around there, good in defence. We saw him with a couple of good tackles there. And Phibbs is a really interesting character. It's almost like the construct that Cheika's going for with these guys as finishers puts too much pressure on Phibbs. I think it looks like he misses that starting jersey and feels, I've got 10 minutes to make a difference here. Yeah. I better have a go. And those passes where he doesn't even look cost us.
Yeah, you talk to a lot of these guys about coming off the bench, and it's one of the toughest things to do. Yeah. You're not battle hardened in the game. You don't get to warm yourself up, get used to the contact, and then feel the flow of the game. You've got to come on. The worst thing coaches can do, and I've seen it many times. I saw it at the Waratahs, line out, bringing your hooker on. So the first thing you have to do after just running up and down the sideline is hit a target, and that's the worst thing you do. So timing is everything there with the bench. But I agree with you. I still think Phipps should be starting. I just think he's got that absolute energy for the side, and I'd like to see that combination with Foley. You saw the combination with Foley and Beale. That was a couple of years of playing together. That was I know it was a move, but that was still a sort of dynamic play, and they had to do the job against that D. Actually, what did you think of the England D? They were aggressive but a bit loose, but I thought they at times had Folau rattled. He wasn't so sharp at the back.
Well, that was a really nice point out of the game, that Folau didn't really fire, but we won the way that we won. In terms of D, I think we mentioned the centres before. The other key matchup clearly was the back row, and we talked about Pooper, that great phrase for Pocock and Hooper. But, did you at any one point of the 80 minutes see anyone from England get over a ball? Get on a tackle and get over a ball. I can't recall once where they actually threatened to steal a ball.
I was only when Sam Burgess fell down after putting that shot on.
I think they were sort of like invited to those outside channels, and that was when things started to go well for the Wallabies, because they thought we've got some pay dirt on the wider channels, and then all that stuff talking about driving through and earning the right to push wide just wasn't there.
Push them wide, and our back row is going to get there first.
Yeah.
What do you think about? This is not gameplay, but the theatre. We've all been to Twickenham. You've been to Twickenham, haven't you, Casher?
Certainly have, 99 actually.
With a packed house, 70,000 people. It is a pretty intimidating place, but that atmosphere the other night was absolutely pumping. And for Australia to go out there in the face of God Save the Queen, and whatever you think about the words, the anthem is so powerful over there. To aim up in that pressure cooker atmosphere, Ben, is something else, and do such a great job.
It is, mate. That is, if you had to script a game that was going to be a hard game to get on top of mentally, that was it. I think I even tweeted at you last week and before the England game and said the England-Wales game wasn't the outcome we wanted. I thought that would fire England up. Yep. I thought England's loss to Wales was going to put them on fire. So we're talking about a home World Cup at Twickenham in front of a packed house, full voice, and they don't just win, they win with a record margin. An amazing victory.
England couldn't have had any more motivation if you handed it on a plate.
Oh yeah, very much so. The game was there. The stage was set. Everything was pretty much in their favour. They're playing at home. There's 80-odd thousand people, however many fit into that ground, and then from there they just basically cocked it up. To be perfectly honest, on a number of fronts. It's as we've said, selection, execution, just the whole mentality of that whole setup is flawed, and they've got to do a clean out. They've got to have an outsider in their coaching this time next year. Maybe even before.
Well, I think they need a coach with a game plan, because their game plan against the Wallabies made about as much sense as a David Campese tweet.
Campo. Very loosely uses the English language, Campo.
Is that English?
You can't always blame autocorrect. Well, it's funny you should say that, because the story doing the rounds is Eddie Jones. Yeah, I won't rule out coaching England, and he'd been thrown around before as a candidate. What sort of force would they be under Jones? I tell you what, England with his directness would be a force again.
Mate, the great rumour was Jones and Woodward together. That was doing a couple of the rounds today, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that was actually pushed out there by Eddie in one
I
of
think
his
it was,
Daily Mail
wasn't it?
columns.
Yeah.
But listen, I'm not sure if that's the right job for Eddie at this particular time. I think he's better off doing his time with the Stormers and then sort of going from there. Obviously, the dollars are very good. Apparently, Lancaster was on 400,000 quid, so that's a pretty sizable wedge for somebody like that. But I think they need someone. Do they need a New Zealander? Do they need a Wayne Smith, who was someone that Lancaster actually pursued before keeping it very much in club?
No, I don't write Eddie off, mate. I think he's been there before, had a long term with Saracens as well. He sort of knows the setup there, and I could easily see Eddie settling into a little term in England.
We spoke about Eddie last time as well, and we talked about his directness and how he always does make sure he tells you what's going on. So, to come out straight after the Stormers' appointment and say Japan didn't have their stuff together, and now then to say, yep, I'd be up for the job straight after taking the Stormers' job. I don't know if you'd be too happy in Cape Town, but he does tell it like it is.
I know he's done short appointments before though, so and this stuff happens. So I think if Eddie said, no, I'm going to England, they're not going to stop him.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop him.
A lot of these guys have clauses written in too about if an international offer comes along, they can take it.
So
we might just move on from Australia to England, but obviously Australia dominating the pool of death, just as a final.
Yeah, look, I think the state that Wales are in with their injuries and what they've been through to get past England. Great credit, but Australia now on the form guide should win that one. If it's a grinding penalty fest, we'll be in trouble. But the way they took on England by moving the ball around, getting some space, going for the tries, made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it certainly did, didn't it, Cash?
Yeah, can only agree with that. They've counted so much hardship at this Rugby World Cup, and I noticed there's even a ghost in the team hotel in room 1313. So listen, they've been up against it all the way through. They'll be very very heroic in the game against the Wallabies, but I can see only one result there, and that's an Australian win.
All right, so across the other pools, Ireland had a tougher win at the weekend, didn't they, Ben? And I didn't get to see it. I was out at Dubbo all weekend, but I did stream the closing stages of the Wallaby match when I had to jump in the car at 7:30 on the phone, and but I just missed the Ireland game. They had to have a tight one at some stage, and it ended up being Italy. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. I did watch that one, and they weren't really that impressive. It was a tough, grinding game. We spoke before about games that you might need. I think that might have been theirs. Italy were up for it.
But you can't dismiss Italy, though.
No, you can't. But still, Ireland and the form guide, if you're going to be the World Cup champion, says you should have done a bit better than that. The first half in particular, Italy were firing. They were doing, a really robust approach to the game. And Ireland weren't doing too well. They only went to the break on top. We talked about that set-piece dominance. They stole two good lineouts that gave them a bit of field position, and they got the points off the back of that. But really, they did struggle a little bit, but took the points in the end.
Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, South Africa had a calamity against Japan, but that's not going to affect them going into the playoffs or the elimination rounds of the quarters and semis and final. So I think it doesn't hurt to have a game like that. It's a tough forwards team, and that's probably good for Ireland at this stage.
I think all those static sort of games that this Ireland-Italy game was, there wasn't much great interplay or anything.
They tell everyone else.
Yeah. You'd always back an Ireland team to win those sort of encounters, and that's the way it turned out. They got their nose in front and they just ground it out and did the simple things well. Just didn't do too much wrong or too much right the way it ended up. So.
Well, it's not bad preparation if you can grind a game out like that, and come up with the points heading into the rounds. Other parts of the draw: France, New Zealand. Thoughts, Ben?
Look, everything seems to be going to script. Everywhere else, the quarterfinals are shaping up the way that we probably expected them to before the World Cup. New Zealand is catching a bit of heat about their error rate. I saw a Justin Marshall column the other day saying that he thinks they've been trying to mix up and play different styles in the early games before they start to hit the way they want to play further on, which means that they're not a surprise they're not quite getting it there. Clearly anyone who writes the All Blacks off is an absolute fool, but it's nice to see them not quite getting it right. France. As ever, I think New Zealand will be the ones who'll be trying to worry about where France might end up. I still say in 2011, the better team lost the final. The luckiest World Cup win ever, those Kiwis. They need this one to bloody validate their last one, in my mind.
But France weren't the best team in the rest of the World Cup, but and the World Cup's not often about the best team anyway. No. So who wins that tournament? Yeah,
that's
right.
I
totally agree.
And the way the pools are falling into place, New Zealand will play France in one of the quarterfinals. So that's a real big test, and the Kiwis have been there before and fallen at that last hurdle. So
the quarterfinals.
Remember '99? That New Zealand France game in '99 was absolutely outstanding.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Only topped by Australia's win, of course.
Of course,
that's right.
Sorry, Casho, were you going to throw something into the?
No, just the form of Argentina. I thought was quite invigorating. They played a lot of footy outside the scrum, and it was good to see. The number 10 Sanchez had a very good game, and they've got some real good gas on the outside there. Imanov and a couple of the other guys there, and they went very well. And I think their involvement in the Rugby Championship has helped them considerably, and the Super Rugby involvement. A lot of those players are actually going to play for the Argentine Super Rugby side. So they're going to keep coming on in leaps and bounds. Good to see.
You mentioned the Super Rugby involvement. You can't go past Japan as well. Another good win. Dominated Samoa. Samoa very ill-disciplined, but a good gap on Samoa there. What a great tournament. I think Eddie Jones said if they win 3 games, they want to be called the team of the tournament. He's not far off.
Oh, yeah.
And if they get their stuff together for the Super 15, they can only go ahead as well.
And it's official, Casho. The Super 15 or Super 6, what is it going to be? Or Super Rugby?
Super Rugby, yeah.
So Japan has a name?
The Sunwolves, I believe. Yeah.
Sunwolves.
Yeah, so they're out there actually interviewing for a CEO at the moment, and I know a couple of the guys there who've put their hand up. Yeah. No, not me, but a couple of the other guys out there who've put their hand up. Not at this stage. Can't tell you too much.
You can't.
Mate, where's the big reveal?
You don't know anything. Come on. Oh,
no big reveal.
Did you ever do that? Come on, say, oh no. This
Absolutely not, mate. That's a height of rudeness.
Yeah, absolutely. Very rude sometimes, cash cow. So Sunwolves, yeah, approve.
Oh, interesting. Are we going to get some sort of Japanese anime logo,
that'd be cool, actually.
Something like that.
Well, we yet to see what sort of team they come up with.
Well, it was a bit of a worry there for a while. No one wanted to play for them.
Well, there were 2 there, and obviously with the corporate involvement in Japanese rugby in their club competition, they were very reticent to release their players to play Super Rugby and then come back and play in their club competition. So there's a few hurdles to go there, but I think what Eddie's done for them is given them a bit of clear air in which to operate administratively to get things back on the rails. But before that, it was Gonski, really, to be honest.
And I think they have to get their shit together for Super Rugby off the back of this World Cup. I don't know the TV figures. Did anyone see those numbers? 25 million apparently for the Samoa-Japan game. Absolutely phenomenal. The TV figures for this World Cup are the best they've ever been. I saw a report too, there were 3 million in Germany. Germany hasn't got a team within coo of the World Cup, watching the World Cup.
We've always had strong numbers for this show in Germany. There's a really strong rugby culture in Germany.
Actually, I think I've worked this out. I think I know the German interest is coming because Michael Checker's doing a Sergeant Schultz from Hogan Heroes impersonation. They ask him about the pools. I know nothing. Ask him about the pools or bonus points. He doesn't know anything.
And it's interesting you mentioned Samoa, and they would have to be the disappointment of this tournament, aren't they? You know, they're highly favoured to contend for a quarterfinal spot. They haven't got within cooey of anyone, really, have they? And it's just I don't think they're well coached. I think they have this mentality that we're bigger than these guys and we can run through them. Whereas the game of rugby these days is a bit more science. You've got to pull defences apart, then slice your way through them or run around them, and that's what Samoa haven't done.
Well, if you're the Samoan coach and you see Japan not take apart, but beat South Africa, and then you still think you're going to run around them, then you've got to have a real rethink of where your attitude is.
Absolutely.
And maybe Argentina should join the NRC cash cow.
Well, that could be the case. But,
Fair bit of travel.
Fair bit of travel, but I wouldn't mind getting on that trip to Argentina for that away game.
I was just about to open the door to you to talk about the NRC, but before, just quickly, 30 seconds each on this. Sam Burgess, has he got a career in rugby, or will he look to get out of it after the World Cup?
First cash, yeah.
Well, I think he has a career path in rugby. I don't think it's in the centres, though. I think Bath have made the correct call. I think he's going to be highly more effective playing at number 6 or a number 8. I think he'd be a good ball runner there, do as much running in the middle of the field and not have that positional responsibilities that you have at 12 or 13. There is a career path there, but he's got a bit of homework to do, that's for sure.
Mate, he's an exceptional footballer. There is a career path there if he wants it. He had 5 tests coming in here, and there was talk in one of those 5 tests of how Barrett was in his ear telling him what to do. I mean, it was just too soon. It was a bad selection because it was too soon. If you're going to put him in the side, you don't put him at 12, where it's going to be a bit of a fulcrum for your backline move, and defensively such an important role. He'll get there if he wants to stay.
And it's a bit different to the guys who came in for Australia, like Lottie Takiri, Matt Rogers. Lottie Takiri started in 2003 for the Waratahs, played in the World Cup final, takes the first kick from Stephen Larkham, scores a try, but he's a winger. The winger transition is so much easier. When you're in closer to the engine room, it's a different ball game. And you saw when Matt Rogers came back to rugby, or came across to rugby, how many times did he get turned over when he first started? It was every tackle.
Yeah, and if you didn't read that column by Gordon Darcy in the Irish Times, which we tweeted back and forth, you get in there and read it. Great to see a player dissect really what was going on with Burgess and give it to him.
Yeah, he did. Gordon Darcy, absolutely, who's been on the show before, actually, a great fella, just gave it to Burgess, and she's caused some commotion, but he backed it up.
Yeah,
good job.
It was a great analysis.
Quickly, cash cow, the NRC, the National Rugby Championship in Australia. What's happening?
Big top of the table game this week. The University of Canberra Vikings are taking on Brisbane City this week, but the one that everybody wants to get...
No one cares about that.
No, they don't. The one that everybody wants to get to is at Rat Park on Saturday at 3 o'clock. No, it's called Super Saturday, boys, and we've got school games, we've got varying other bits and pieces happening, including a special sevens challenge between the Manly, Warringah, Norths and Gordon clubs, but the players have to be over 100 kilos to qualify to play. So it's big boys sevens. So get there at 2:40, just in time for the big boys sevens game. So plenty happening. There'll be lots of waddling and lots of big hits and maybe a few tries. After that, there's a gourmet barbecue and a live band afterwards. So what else could you want?
I think one of our favourite listeners, Greg Growden, is a big fan of the Rat Park barbecue.
Oh yeah,
particularly when it's gourmet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
He should be a reviewer of food everywhere.
I think that's what he's doing. So I do believe that a lot of the guys who've gone there from Australia, the guys actually covering it, they're struggling with their weight at the moment. I think it's the
late night curry and chips, mate.
It's the workload, and as you say, it's the late night curry and chips.
All right, Casho, thanks for coming in.
Not a worry, Bronk.
All right, and Ben Kimber, good to see you back, mate.
Absolute pleasure.
Go, Bernard Foley. All right, that's the end of the show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week when we head into the elimination rounds of the World Cup.
You've been listening to RuggaMatrix International, episode 207, The Blame Game, with Juro Sen, Mark Cashman and Ben Kimber.